Overall, the industry from a cloud go-to-market perspective, we're probably beyond the innovators already, right? I think we're looking at the early adopters because more and more ISVs are jumping on this train and want to take advantage of these amazing partnerships and almost this new way of selling software, right? So if we want to build an engine at the end of the day, think of them as these three phases that we've just seen as well in order to grow our co-selling motion.
Join our 5-week course on cloud marketplaces and learn how to tap into the $250 billion spend that enterprises have committed to AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. Discover the future of go-to-market with Roman. During weekly sessions, you'll learn how to leverage this fast-growing channel and network with industry experts and partnership leaders. We'll dive into marketplace strategies, internal buy-in, building relationships with the cloud, and mastering co-sell. Join our upcoming cohort.
Really excited to have in our session Daniel Roppert. Daniel has great experience in cloud marketplaces. He is currently head of cloud and tech alliances, EMEA in Okta. Okta obviously doesn't need any introduction. I wrote about Okta. It's a great identity company. Daniel was kind enough to agree to share his insights on how to partner with AWS, what are the tactics that he found helpful, and other important things. I really look forward to this conversation.
By way of introduction, Daniel been at Okta for the past a little over 4 years, running our cloud team for a little over 2 years. Spent a bit of time at Deloitte as well, in the US actually. I joined Okta and we were smaller in Europe back in the day and was really the partner guy. We only launched on the AWS marketplace at the end of 2020. So it's coming up to 3 years where we had quite a bit of excitement and growth journey around that. And this is ultimately what we want to talk about today. Everyone probably knows the technology adoption life cycle. If you haven't seen or heard or read Crossing the Chasm, a really cool book by Jeffrey Moore. And I think this is exactly the place where I would see the cloud marketplaces journey at the moment. In the presentation today, we want to look at the three phases early on. So we want to look at the innovators, the early adopters, and how do we actually get to a proper scale? And there are a couple of ideas that we're working on at the moment at Okta to get to that point. But overall, the industry, right? I think from a cloud go-to-market perspective, maybe Roman, you can have your feedback on this as well. We're probably beyond the innovators already, right? I think we're looking at the early adopters because more and more ISVs are jumping on this train and want to take advantage of these amazing partnerships and almost this new way of selling software, right? So
Yeah.
how we want to look at this, right? We want to build an engine at the end of the day. And so from my perspective, this is very slightly depending on the product that you have, the company that you're at. But think of them as these three phases that we've just seen as well in order to grow our co-selling motion. They may not sit perfectly depending on what's happened in phase one, but I think it's a good framework, it's a good guide on where we should look at things. There are also dependencies in between, but it's not like a pure checklist that everyone should follow and then will be the recipe for success. So I think really early on, as we start out with cloud partnerships, and AWS is the particular example that we agreed to use here as well, because that's where I had most of my experience with, is really that a lot of it depends on the product, what you're trying to sell. So is this a product that actually complements the offering of the hyperscaler that you're working with? Or is it more like even a competing or an alternative product, right? Important to note, right? Even if you think there's a competing product, that's not the end of your cloud go-to-market here, right? There are a lot of, like, if we think about some of the data ISVs, they've built massive cloud businesses by having a pure competitive product. Because ultimately, what do the hyperscalers and AWS care about, right? It's making the customer happy, right? Customer is really the king in their example, so they always work backwards for them. The other important piece to your superpower is where are you hosting your solution, right? This will drive a significant impact, especially as we get to the later phases on as well. Are you multi-cloud? Are you only hosting on AWS? So, for instance, this is where we're with Okta today, right? So you really have to think what cloud partnerships make sense for you, depending on where your solution is hosting, because you are at the same time a big customer of theirs. So this can drive a lot of goodness, or sometimes even locks you out from some marketplaces if you're not hosting on their solution. Another good superpower to have is if you're part of these bigger cloud stories, right? So what's the number one sales play that every hyperscaler cares about? Well, I want to move my stuff into the cloud, right? So any migration, anything that puts high, very like data or resource heavy workloads into the cloud. If your solution is or can be part of that, amazing, right? This will make you part of a very complex sales play with them, but can really drive big growth because they're doing a lot of these projects. They're also heavily funded, these projects. So we'll get into that a little bit later on. In my opinion, you should also look in whenever you sign up with a hyperscaler, look towards a path to have the highest partnership level that is out there. So if I think about AWS, I believe they have roughly 7,000 tech partners out there. You have to stand out from the crowd to some extent, right? And just being an IC success partner is great, but you may not get the attention that you deserve, or that you should have. So whenever you sign up and commit to a cloud partner, right, think about, so SRRP as an example here for AWS, SaaS revenue recognition. Again, multiple parts of your superpowers tie into this. Are you hosting on the AWS world at the end of the day? And we didn't even get to marketplaces with all of these superpower points. So it's really complex, and I think it's worth spending a lot of time on this to understand what value are you bringing to the equation. And in terms of size, right? I don't know all the companies that are here on the call are present today, but I would presume all of us, or most of us, are smaller than what the AWS business generates in revenue. This is a huge, huge beast. We're talking, I don't know, I don't have the exact numbers right now, $80 billion revenue, right? 30 to 40% growth. These are massive numbers for any ISV out there. So it's probably helpful to try to level up and have a path. You don't have to do this from day one and in order to grow and be relevant, but have a path to really get up there and become super relevant. And then last, we eventually launch on Marketplace, right? I wanted to really point out all the pre-work that has to go in this, because, and we'll see this in the pitfalls later on, right? You're not going to be successful just because you launched on Marketplace, right? This might be one of the biggest misconceptions that some have, obviously, as you probably spend more time on this. So doing a good job on that and planning the launch on Marketplace, tying it to maybe some of your conferences, maybe some of AWS conferences, have a plan on this, and actually use the superpowers that you just identified for that launch, because that will then allow us to get into from the early adoption phase to actually get started in our co-selling motion, right? Some of the recipes that I tried to list there, I know enablement sounds like the most boring thing to put on a slide when we talk about co-selling. Reality check, it will never go away, even today, right? It's so recurring. Put this like on your quarterly roadmap. I love our sales teams to death, but at the same time, right, they need to hear this story frequently. Every quarter, they need to hear about this, even the ones that have done marketplaces, right? Keep them informed, keep them in the know, what's new, but also some of the basics, right? As soon as you stop enablement because you think everyone went through enablement, your pipeline probably won't grow as much, or the engagement from your sales team. So a super basic principle that I think is one of the key takeaways from the session today. You also want to look at enabling the AWS sales teams. There's one crux to that, yes, there are a lot of partners asking for that. You have to make it relevant to them. So whenever you have, for instance, you have a co-sell win or a marketplace win in a certain vertical or certain segment, right? Put that story in there. And this is also very repeatable, right? This will allow them to relate. They're very industry focused or segment focused. So you really have to tailor it to their interests, to their accounts, to their needs, and walking in with a very generic of like taking Okta as an example, right? Hey, identity is great. You can use that everywhere. And we have like, I don't know, 3 manufacturing customers, but I'm presenting to retail. Yeah, probably in the other 7 ISVs that follow you will probably get more referrals or interaction. There was one investment that we made that I put down there as Cloud Desk. What is a Cloud Desk? A Cloud Desk is basically a person that we put in that helps bridge the gap between our field sellers, the AWS community. This includes all the way to the customer. If we talk CPPO, also the channel partners now. It's really, think of it as a white glove service to anything marketplace. Why this was so important to us is because this stuff is still new, right? So I keep calling it stuff because that's what my account managers sometimes say as well. And I feel they've done a marketplace deal. They know how this works. 3 months later, same questions, right? If there's something going wrong, right? There's an easy way to fall back to, I'm just gonna another DocuSign. That's safe. I know this. I've done this a million times before. Because there's always a bit of skepticism when it comes to new stuff, despite all the benefits. And this person can really help you. And the sales teams have a very good experience. I will almost bet with all of you, they will in 12 or 18 months be the hero in at least one of the cases and get a praise because they fixed something and they become a true expert on the operation side. And that's something that is absolutely needed because you don't sometimes know where marketplace offer is, if the customer accepted, or what the error message was that popped up on the customer side. There is also an early consideration on automating things. This sounds something for later on, but yes, you're going to be fine when you have 10 or 20 co-selling deals. If you get in the hundreds, you're already in for a treat. And I know how many, I see Rolf nodding as well. I don't know how many weekends that I spent updating A's values in the pipeline, right? You don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. So whatever automation it is, tackle, scripts, whatever you need. I think there will be a requirement in the future that needs to happen. But yeah, the good thing is that the co-sell motion can grow quite fast with a lot of opportunities, and all of a sudden you're lost in a lot of manual work, and this impacts negatively on your side because AWS looks at dashboards and numbers. If your ACE values are incorrect, if the close dates are not correct, so this is just not as smooth. So despite this looking early, it is not. You will also start probably the first couple of demand gen activities. Again, your superpowers from phase 1 will be key here. What are your USPs? What are the sales play use cases that you want to address early, right? I think it's important to play around with this. I don't know if there's a good way of working with AWS or hyperscaler marketing that is a silver bullet. I think a lot of it depends, which is not a great answer for this part. But you need to go out, trial and error, understand what's working for you and apply the learnings. And once you get to the learnings, we'll see this later on and more repeatable motion. This will actually trigger results, but it's really very individual depending on the use case, the industry, you're in security, if you're in data, you're in business applications. But ultimately you want to get started and try it because what AWS and hyperscalers give you is reach. This is phenomenal, right? They have millions of customers out there.